as I might actually can read this out. I began writing weeks up to our split. Or I started a little while before I split and finished this kind of thought process thereafter around the 20th of April 25. I said, yeah, I might just have to make this a separate video. But one of the things is that I could see the split. I could see it coming, and it became very apparent in her like political views, her church-based views, or her in the name of kingdom views. Like I just disagreed with. Right? We were it was so much like sin-based. And yeah, yes, sin, holiness, righteousness, correction, all the good things, right? But also there was no love for just condemnation for the populations that she felt like needed deliverance so bad. I'm like, if we all take a look at our own families, we got enough work to do before we start working on big community causes. And I'm not saying, right, before we take on a bigger thing, have you worked on this part? Have you worked on your neighbors like in the next bedroom? Have you worked on the neighbor that you sleep with every night? And also, saved married people are the worst. They swear to God they don't have no sin. Baby, just because you having sex with one person that you married to, that don't mean you are like perfect or like without sin. And just because you're in a straight relationship doesn't mean that you are without sin. Girl, please. So it was a lot of that kind of stuff. And I was like, are you picking the wrong fight? Like, girl. But okay, and I noticed that we just didn't have the same approach. Even if some of the bottom lines were the same, the approach I felt like just wasn't as loving, and I could feel the split. She told me one day we were having a conversation in a separate setting, not church-based, or not even faith-based really, and that I was sarcastic. She says, "Has anyone ever told you you're sarcastic?" I said, "No. Nobody's ever told me that before," which is true. Nobody ever told me I was sarcastic. That was, of all the things, I've never been called sarcastic, and I thought about it. I looked it up. I'm not sarcastic, but I could feel the tension. And what I thought would lead to like a greater conversation, like, hey, here's the areas where I feel like we could explore conversationally. Here's the things that I feel like we might have different or in common. Here's where I am now with certain things in terms of growth and maturity. And I just wanted to chat about those sorts of things, but it would have kept the relationship going, which obviously was not the will of God. So she like called me that day and like fake balled me out about like what she heard the Lord say and why she can't service me in certain capacities, or what she will not tolerate, or what she said to me was that there was a lack of reverence for her. And I thought, who am I supposed to revere? Baby, if you died tomorrow, if you bled like I bled, if you cut me and somebody cut you, and we're gonna bleed the same non-redemptive blood, what reverence do you want? I already loved you. I already look out for you. I already prayed for you. I already fasted with you. I already done them things. I done showed my love towards you. What you want? Reference? Girl. Girl, I know you lying. So I was like, excuse me, I looked at the phone like, is we for real? I was like, oh no, Lord, this is bad, real bad, Michael Jackson. So those are things like I sort of ignored, right? It was just strange, and the burden was lifted, right? Because now I don't have to be occupied with this thing anymore. It took up so much of my time, and I never really and I'll say this and be quiet on this particular front. I left it. I didn't have the capacity for myself to pull certain parts of my life together, right? So I depended on people around me who knew me best to say, "Hey, Vanessa," inadvertently, right? I never spoke these things. I didn't have the verbiage there, but I was like, I had hoped quietly, I think, that someone close to me would be able to say, "Hey, where are you with this part of your life? Why aren't you exercising this particular gift? Why can't you stretch or grow or do this?" And I would have thought it would have come from her, because in some areas it did, but in the areas of like how I spent my time, at that time I wasn't working. I was fully involved with church ministry, from being physically present to being a few states away, virtually, and still commandeering, or I don't think that's the right word, but still running ministry for her on that front. And I thought to myself, she would have never. She didn't agree with me going, "I don't discern that the Lord is calling you to go to New York City." Of course you don't. You would not have, because as much far as you discerned was my church life. You didn't see much from me outside of that, if it wasn't preaching or whatever. And maybe you could have thought it was going to happen, but you would have never actually given me the green light. You would have never said you're called to these things. Anytime I've ever showed any prowess in anything, it was like, oh, she'll do this in the church. And God wasn't interested in either one of us that on that particular front. But it would not have behooved her or her ministry for me to go back to work full time, or for me to occupy myself in other areas with other things, other passions, other pursuits, because it would have meant less time with the ministry. And I was vital to the ministry. I was important to the ministry. I don't want to say central, but I worked if nobody else worked. It was her, the lead deacon, and myself, right? We worked the thing and got some things done. And I'm not saying it would have crumbled without me, no, but I'm saying I know I was making a difference where I was, and I would not have stayed if I didn't think that was the case. So it wouldn't, of course she wouldn't have said, oh, grow, be better, go, do other things, push, push, push. Never, because it's easier to keep me in your pocket.